you were about to go on a really good rant about children being, or the school keeping things from parents,
Yep,
right? Okay,
I
so
sure was.
you sure are. I smelled it coming, so I'm gonna let you. Do you want me to bring up this one or a different
Sure.
photo? This one
Yeah.
here.
The that lawsuit is one of the ones that's actually linked in this article.
Hmm.
And when I was looking at this bill, I was like, okay, I could see some concerns.
Hmm.
I could see some places where I would say this is probably a good bill. And then I thought, in those places where I thought it was a good bill, what's Waldo going to tell me? I thought, well, he'll probably tell me that this isn't happening, that it's not fixing anything because there's no conspiracy, et cetera, that the Republicans are making things up.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, are they? So then I started looking. And what I found was pretty concerning.
Hmm.
And actually, there were some points when I was reading certain things that made me pretty fucking furious.
Hmm.
Um, you have the first article that I linked to, where a person is actually arguing in favor of keeping medical information from parents.
Hmm.
And then the second one is an article on the schools that are actually doing that, that are not telling parents when their child is showing symptoms of gender identity disorder,
Hmm.
for example. And then there is the most egregious thing I saw, where it's in this lawsuit,
Hmm.
you actually have this school that, according to at least the parent in this suit, they took steps deliberately to conceal things from the parent. Uh, they told the student not to tell their parent about the change in gender identity.
Hmm.
They were holding they called it the Equality Club,
Hmm.
during lunch, so that it wasn't during after hours for the school like every other club,
Okay.
so that they could, so that the students wouldn't have to answer questions about where they were after school or what club they were attending.
Hmm.
They deliberately didn't keep a record of of which students were attending.
Hmm.
They concealed the transition, or at least the social transition, from the parent by uh, by using the child's you know given name in conversations with the parent, but when the parent wasn't around, they'd call the child by the new name.
Hmm.
And all of this cut the parent out completely
Hmm.
from the process. What the fuck is that?
They were
That is
worried.
not acceptable.
They were worried the parent was going to harm this child.
No, no, they
Yes.
weren't.
Yes. I read right here. Um, Miss Corin, Mrs. Conan supports her daughter. I do not believe that sentence, regardless of the decisions she makes. I do not believe that sentence. If the school is keeping it from the parent, it's probably because the child has suggested that they will be harmed by the parent or the parent will shut it down. None of the things you
No,
mentioned are medical.
that's
None of the
I
things you
think that's
mentioned are
totally
medical.
baseless.
None of the things you mentioned are medical.
Well,
You
you
said
know,
medical 7 times, and then you described to me what happened, and none of it was medical. It's all social.
oh, hold on. Gender identity disorder is medical, and to assign a treatment for it is also medical.
Yes, but the
They
school
have
didn't do anything medical. The school did only social things. If the school was
Social
sneaking this kid,
transitioning is part of a treatment plan for gender identity disorder.
yes, but it is not medical.
It is.
Changing your name is not a medical thing. If
I think
if
you're
the
missing my
school,
point.
I hear it, I just don't agree with it. The if the school was sneaking her off to hormone therapy, I'm against it. If the school is just changing her name, I don't care. If the if you can't tell your parents something like that, there's a reason you can't tell them. And what is the reason? I don't know. Maybe this kid was just scared. And if they're scared, why are they scared of their parents?
Well, hold on a second, because that is not. I don't think that that is true. I think
Which one?
that the child is scared of their parents.
Why would they
And
not
in
tell
fact,
them?
the rest of this complaint, let me bring it up on my own screen
Okay,
here so I can find the part I'm talking
sure.
about.
Under the parental secrecy policy, Spreckles Union teachers and staff at Buena Vista would conceal from parents that their minor child has articulated confusion about their gender identity, evinced a desire to change their gender identity, or assumed or expressed a new gender identity unless the student expressly authorized the parents to be informed.
Here it is. It's on page 7.
Mm-hmm.
AG, which is the name of the student in question,
Sure.
11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Started school at Buena Vista in the 6th grade. Attended an equality club meeting at the invitation of a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Was not interested in the discussion. Decided not to come back to the club. 2 weeks later, one of the teachers involved in this approached her and asked her to come back to the club, telling her that she fit in perfectly, and she agreed to come back. At these meetings and other discussions, they told her that she was bisexual,
Mm-hmm.
an idea that did not originate with her.
Mm-hmm.
Later, they told her that she was trans, an idea that also did not originate with her.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she began to develop mental issues as a result. Went and talked to the counselor, and then these two teachers would follow up from those counselor sessions regarding the same topics,
Mm-hmm.
and told her that the feelings she was having were because she wasn't who she was, and that if she became her true self, that depression and stress would be better.
Mm-hmm.
This is not okay.
This is the complaint. This is the person accusing these things. You know what's going to happen? The other side is going to say, no, we didn't force this on her. She came to us and we uh, accepted it. And then they're going to go to court and they're going to battle it out. You're seeing one side of this story right here, and that's the side from an angry, aggrieved parent. And that angry, aggrieved parent is going to file a court briefing that says they were forcing this.
This is not the only parent that's doing this, though.
I know that
And
it's not the
and
only
the
parent that's
fact that
doing
the
that,
school is
which is
is
why they
doing
need to keep
this
it
and
secret.
concealing it from the parent. Most of the parents that are involved in these things identify as liberal.
Wait, no, I
Uh-huh.
don't believe you because you're going to tell me that these teachers are raging liberals who are forcing it on students, and it's the parents, and it's a trend thing for liberal parents to have trans kids. You're going to use that
No,
that discussion
it's not where
later
I'm
of
going
like,
at all.
okay, well,
No.
this is what the the Ben Shapiro's and the hard right guys say, that it's trendy to have trans children, and so the liberal parents are forcing it on their kids. So this person, this mother, is
So on the New York
possibly
Times
liberal.
article,
Uh huh.
when students change gender without their parents knowing,
Yes.
you know which one.
Uh huh.
Uh, Control F liberal, and it's going to be under the section a hard thing to navigate.
Okay. Other self-described liberal parents said that they registered as independents or voted for Republican candidates for the first time as a result of this issue. Although they haven't sued, some have retained lawyers affiliated with the largest legal organization on the religious right to battle their children's schools. I don't believe them.
Well, there's
If
more to
you,
that. There's
if
most
you,
said they identified as liberal.
uh huh,
Uh, it
they say they do.
it's a hard thing to navigate because on the one hand, I'm dealing with my very liberal values of individuality, freedom, expression, sexuality, wanting to support all of this stuff. At the same time, I'm afraid of medicalization and long-term health. I'm afraid that my child might change their mind. It's
Mm-hmm.
politically weird to be a very liberal Democrat and find yourself shoved in bed with like the governor of Texas. Am I
Yes.
supposed to be? Am I supposed to listen to Tucker Carlson?
Great. I agree. That okay.
I mean,
So
if
when
if you just think that everybody that
they're
talks to this
fine.
reporter are lying,
No. I don't think they're lying. I
or if you
don't
think that Katie
think.
Baker is lying,
I think that Republicans often use a double standard or a uh, type of two Santa Claus theory. Like, that's not a good description. Anyway, I'm re-evaluating what I'm saying here. Um, they often tell me that it's trendy. So liberal people will have their kids transition against their will because they want to be cool. They want to be a liberal. They want to be like the furthest left person they can. So they force this on their children. And they say that of the school teachers. The school teachers are all super liberals and they're all forcing this on children. And they're forcing them to transition when they're not actually. And that's what you've got in this complaint right here. Not the teachers are forcing this down her throat. And the teachers are following her to the counselor and saying that she's not doing what she's supposed to be. And she's a bisexual trans person who needs to transition, or else she's uh, not. She's what? What's the word? Constraining herself. Uh, and I don't think that's what's happening. This is the complaint. This is going to be as accusatory as possible in this document. And it's going to say, hey, she forced it. Hey, these teachers are forcing it. Hey, this is what's going on. That's why I have to have a case. And then the other side is going to say, no, we weren't. And that'll play out in court. But if this child thought something was being forced on them and they didn't tell their parents, why didn't they tell their parents? It goes both
because they
ways.
were told not to.
No, they weren't.
They certainly were, at least
No,
according to the
I
lawsuit.
I read yeah, according to that lawsuit, I read the just a moment ago. I read their policy. Unless student expressly authorized the parents to be informed. So the student can and will, according to their policy, authorize the parents to be informed.
Well, no,
That's
in
their
this lawsuit,
policy.
they allege that they instruct the students not to tell their parents. That is completely different from a policy of just not informing the parents. Instructing the students not to tell their parents is totally different.
Okay, so we will
I'll
have to
tell you what,
we'll have
when
to
I was
find
a
out
kid,
in
when I was a kid,
that'll go to court whether they that's the two sides of the
when
coin, isn't it?
when
Either
I was a
they
kid,
were told not to or they were told they don't have to.
when I was a kid,
Hmm.
my parents, and I still remember this to this day, I got very specific instructions from my parents.
Hmm.
The instructions were, if someone ever tells you not to tell us about something, come and tell us immediately.
Hmm. I agree with that statement. I do. But they're gonna have to prove in court that that's what the teachers said, and you're taking their word for it. The teachers may have
I
just said you don't have to tell your parents, and that's follow me here. You don't have to tell them. The student chooses not to tell them. The parents find out and they sue, and this is what they've written that the school forces you not to tell. They're overreacting,
Oh no,
possibly,
they didn't
possibly.
force them not to tell. They just said
You
they
don't
just
have to.
recommended it maybe,
Okay,
or
see,
told
so
them don't tell your parents.
is that a
But they don't force them not to tell. I mean,
is
how could they possibly,
right?
right?
Exactly. There is a difference between you do not tell your parents and you don't have to tell your
Oh no,
parents.
do not
There
tell
is a
your
difference.
parents is still what I think they said. I would
Well,
just
we'll find out in
classify that
court.
as a recommendation or an instruction
I
as
would
opposed to forcing them to,
I would
because you can't force them
agree
to.
that if the teachers are saying do not tell your parents about this, I would agree they're crossing the line and they're not even following their own policy and they're doing something wrong. If the
Okay.
if the teachers are saying you don't have to tell your parents and the children are choosing not to, then they're within the policy and they're within what I think would be uh, acceptable. So we this entire court case will have to nail down, was it you don't have to tell your parents or you do not tell them. And if this 11-year-old thinks that they've been forced, we'll have some uh, testimony to that from the teachers, from the other kids, from the uh, discovery process. We'll get people explaining things. And on a whole, on a big picture, uh, this policy, as it's written right here, I accept.
Okay. So if it is as this lawsuit alleges,
Hmm. Which,
the teachers are way out of line.
okay, yeah, if this is the policy and this is what they did, where they're forcing it on her, then they have gone against their own policy and they have done something wrong. And I'm on board for that.
Okay.
If they're forcing it and they're telling children, do not tell your parents what we are doing here, they're wrong. And they're not even following their own policy.
Okay.
If it goes the other direction and that these children are terrified to tell their parents, then I'm definitely okay with them keeping a secret.
I'm
And
sure that there are some cases where that's the case, but I would say the majority probably not.
oh, I'd put it the other exact opposite way. The majority are terrified to tell their parents about this, and that you get a small amount of kids who feel pressured.
Small amount of kids who feel pressure. Well,
I
that
don't
was another
want them to
thing I
feel
found
pressure. I don't want
in
them to feel
my.
pressure.
Well, I would say that there is a certain amount of pressure in the other direction as well, especially if it's being pushed by teachers or by peers. Uh, in fact, in the first article I linked you from the New York Times, the one where the argument is in favor of this,
Hmm.
there is a quote from the director of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, where the director specifically says that at least peer influence, if not social contagion, I'm paraphrasing,
Hmm.
uh, is a factor in a child's gender identity.
Hmm. That's
So
true and
if
has
there
always
is a
been true.
degree of social contagion there, which is it's a very contentious topic
Peer
for
pressure
reasons.
has always existed and will always exist with everything. Peer pressure makes makes me talk with a southern accent when I live in Texas. I don't do this because
Well,
that's the way I was born. I wasn't born with a Texas accent. My peers pressured it onto me.
but
Th-
the Texas accent is not going to end up causing irreversible damage if you go too far
oh,
with it.
it does. Uh, I, I can't be a brain surgeon. I can't walk into
Um,
the damn room and be like, all right, y'all, let's open up this skull.
I mean, we
Can't
are
be a.
starting to see a certain number of people that are now detransitioning
There are.
because they realize that being transgender was not for them.
Okay.
It didn't help their mental health, or it made it worse.
I've heard that those numbers are really low, and it's generally based on uh,
Really no,
a
really low but
severe.
increasing.
Okay. Well, so is the number of people who are trying to transition, because now it's becoming acceptable. They're allowed to come out of the closet and they're allowed to be human beings and people. So there will be more of them that do that. Um,
Well, it's acceptable, or it's being pushed, or there's some peer influence there. I mean, we don't know
peer
yet what
peer
causes
influence
gender identity
causes
crisis
peer
like
influence
this.
causes children to buy trucks and smoke cigarettes and hang out with their friends and
Hmm.
hate on Justin Bieber. Like it can peer pressure can cause a million things.
Yes, it can.
But if it causes this, it's a problem. I'm just saying,
It's a
like
problem
it caused
in all those other cases too.
peer pressure caused me to drink and smoke
Peer
as a
peer
teenager.
pressure causing children to smoke is also bad.
Okay, great.
Why are you? I mean, I
I'm
don't
not.
understand what your argument is here.
I'm saying, why are you singling that out as some sort of special case? It's not a special case. It's common. It happens. It happens to everybody all the time, forever, and you're never going to do anything about it.
Uh, Children smoking is illegal.
Yes.
This is not the same thing.
Right. Children transitioning is legal for now, so you should be far less worried about it.
Well, it is legal,
Right.
but it should
And
be.
and
And look, if there's a medical diagnosis, fine. they should be allowed to go on their PBD blockers and whatnot and all that.
Great.
I get it, but parents also should be involved in the process.
I agree they should be allowed in the
Well, the
process.
schools are concealing this stuff from the parents.
Maybe. That's what this complaint says. This complaint says that the teachers are willingly and intentionally stopping the parents from knowing about this. If they are, and it's the same thing. If that school said, "Hey, you don't have to tell your parents," then there's nothing here. There's no problem. There's no issue. There's no lawsuit, and there's nothing that this parent can complain about. If this actually was the policy of highlighted here, and if they followed that policy, and they didn't do the pressuring, then this lawsuit is nonsense, and it'll come out that it wasn't pressured, because that's what this court case is going to do. Where the teacher's pressuring them, the defense is going to say, or the prosecution is going to say, yeah, yes, they were pushing it, they were forcing it, they were trying to convince her that she was these things, even though she wasn't. And they were forcing this onto her through peer pressure and pressure from her teachers. I
So you
recognize how
agree that
that
if
is
they act
bad.
outside that policy and expressly tell them not to tell the parents,
Then they
that's
have,
outside of policy and they have a
yes,
problem.
and they have
Okay.
harmed that child.
All right.
I would agree with that.
Second part is I don't agree with the policy itself.
Okay, that's a different discussion. That is a larger discussion. So,
So
on
this
the
is
larger end,
a adoption and implementation of a policy
hmm
that had to occur at some point, right?
hmm
Like,
right, because how did this come to be? A student confided in their teacher, and their teacher said, "I don't know what to do. Do I tell the parents? Do I not?"
yes,
Okay, well,
you tell the parents.
um, if the teacher's smart, they would have passed it up to their supervisor and said, "Hey, do we tell the parents about this?"
And by the way, the Don't Say Gay law provides express instruction that if there is concern that there would be abuse or something at home
hmm
as a result of telling the parent, then they won't tell the parent.
Okay, great.
The Don't Say Gay law provides
So
for that.
you're on
In
board.
every other
So you're
case,
on board for this
no, this policy
policy.
does not have that. They don't tell at all unless the student expressly authorized the parents to be informed. That's totally
Right.
different. That is
Who would be
it's
more informed on whether or not they're going to get a beating when they get home than the student?
I think that there are plenty of signs of abuse that would be readily available and are already looked for by teachers.
Great. But the
So this
student
is this
will
is the
be
difference
making that
between
decision. The student has to make
this
that
is the
decision.
difference between having to opt in and having to opt out of something,
Right.
right?
I agree.
Where I'm sorry, but for minors, it's an opt out thing that it should be and not an opt in when it comes to telling the parents.
If they if the school was giving them medical stuff, I would accept it, but they're not. They're just doing social stuff. If you want to keep social things away from your parents, you're allowed to. If the students here do not want their parents to know, that's fine. If they were, yeah, I said it already, but yeah, if the school was driving you to hormone replacement therapy, I would be very much against it. The parents
Okay,
have to know about
so
that.
so like for example, in the article
hmm
from the New York Times, where one mother in California shared messages that her teenager's teacher had sent through the school's web portal for encouraging the student to obtain medical care, housing, and legal advice without the parents' knowledge.
If the teacher is telling you a student that, are they giving them uh, resources, or are they giving them specific instruction on how to accomplish these things? I don't know. Where's that at? Let me read it.
It's in that article. If you Control F legal, it's the third one on the page. this whole article is just riddled with extremely concerning stuff.
Hmm. Messages that her teenagers, one mother in California shared messages that her teenager's teacher had sent through the school's web portal, encouraging the student to obtain medical care, housing, and legal advice without the parents' knowledge. Um, okay,
Next one's
that's
bad
all it
too.
says. A
A
lawsuit filed
lawsuit.
against a school district in Wisconsin included a photo of a teacher's flyer posted at school that stated, "If your parents aren't accepting of your identity, I'm your mom now." That is a teacher trying to help. Um, if these two situations are teachers forcing things on the children, I'm not for it. If it's the teachers trying to keep these children from being abused by their parents, then I am
I
for
think
it.
that the abuse angle here is a way lower incidence rate than you're assuming. I
Uh,
think that even conservative families, if their child came out to them, wouldn't abuse their kid.
they would tell them, no, you're not a trans person. No, you're not a girl. No, you're not a boy. You're going to stop that right now. And then send them to a special camp, to a detransition type camp.
Or they
That's
might
what they're,
seek medical assistance.
or they might,
They might
if,
go to a psychologist.
right, but then they would get the Christian right wing psychologist who's going to make you stop being uh, trans. If if the kids don't want their parents to know, it's because the kids don't want their parents to know. There's a reason behind it. Is it abuse? Is it that they won't accept it? Is it because they're going to fight about it? Is it because there's uh, some sort of bad thing that they see coming by letting their parents know this? I can't even imagine a kid who is like, oh yeah, my parents are completely accepting, they're totally going to love it, and they're going to continue to love me, and they're going to get me medical treatment, but I'm not going to tell them. It's a lottery ticket that you won, but you just kept and didn't cash for some reason. It's insane. No one would do such a thing. Hey, I did this scratcher. I won $70, but I'm just gonna put it aside. Never do anything with it. it's
I don't
it's
know.
it's not a
I
thing.
think that well,
I
I think
can't I can't
there
I can't create a scenario in my head. I'm over here building scenarios of a uh, kid confides in their teacher because they feel like they can't with their parents because their parents are too good and too loving and too accepting.
I mean, I guess it really comes down to what degree has this have they been influenced to come to this decision? And seeking the proper medical care, which would be to go see a psychiatrist and whatnot, is the best thing. And if you keep the information from the parents, they can't do that.
I agree that
Parents
yeah,
have to be involved
parents
in the
have to be involved
process.
with the medical transitions. Yes, I agree. They have to be
Okay,
involved with
except
medical.
that the social transitioning is part of the treatment if there is a diagnosis. So you're employing treatment options without a diagnosis, first of all.
Right, and those are not medical treatments. Those
They,
social treatments can be done by anybody.
they should be done
you don't need a
with the
doctor's
parents'
note to
consent
change
and
your name.
as a part of a treatment plan.
In a perfect world, yes, they would be. But sometimes parents stand in the way of that. If that
And that
social
is,
treatment
I'm
is for
sorry, but that is their right as a parent.
medical treatment, but not social. If your kids want to change their name and not tell you, that's fine. They can do that. They're people. They're not property. If they want to do social things in school that are not considered harmful, then they don't have to tell their parents about it. And if the school wants to avoid telling those parents, I mean, I think that's fine because there's a reason that the child doesn't want to tell the parents. Either there's a handful of reasons that they wouldn't tell the parents, but none of those reasons are because they'd love me too
There are any
much.
number of reasons,
Right.
and
And none of them
but
are
any
because
number
they'd
of
love
those
me too
reasons
much.
could be maybe you're right. Maybe there's a stigma that's associated with not being or not feeling like you're the right gender. You're having
Hmm.
a gender identity crisis.
Okay.
If and maybe this the student is uncomfortable with that fact themselves,
Hmm.
and maybe the teacher is just maybe noticing behaviors by the student. It doesn't have to be that the student came to them and told them, "Oh, I'm having this issue." The teacher might notice that the student enjoys playing with Barbies a little more than playing with He-Man,
Sure.
right? And that would be something that it might be worth bringing up to the parents, so that the parents can investigate that kind of thing.
Hmm.
That I think is probably way more common than what you're suggesting, where some student comes out and confides in a teacher because they aren't willing to confide in their own parents. I think that these teachers are probably observing students
Hmm.
and then assessing them on their own without a medical diagnosis, and then assigning them with a particular you know uh, status, or not status, but potentially telling them or assigning them a certain orientation or gender identity,
Hmm.
and then not and they could be wrong.
Hmm.
So they're assigning those degenerate identities, and then they are pushing um, the that social transition
Hmm.
on the student, and then they're keeping it from the parents. That shouldn't be allowed.
Worst case scenario, I agree with you. If they are instructing students they were not to tell their parents about their new gender identity, which is what it says in the court case here, because their parents could not be trusted, and otherwise concealing those facts from parents. If they're forcing it, if they're pushing, do not trust your parents, you cannot believe what they're saying, then they're wrong. And they're forcing a thing on them that is bad, and those people should be held accountable in the court of law. And
Okay,
if a student
so
says, I don't want to tell my parents, they will harm me, the, the teacher should be allowed to keep that to themselves.
well, the don't say gay law makes specific provisions for that.
Okay, great. I Then we agree
I'm
that.
I'm saying that most school districts right now,
Hmm.
not most, the ones that I've been reading about
Hmm.
have it as a difference between the opt-in and
Hmm.
the opt-out,
Hmm.
where if you if the child's parents are going to be told, the child has to opt in to telling the parents, which doesn't necessarily even mean that the child is asked if they want their parents to be told. The teachers might just assume or choose not to ask.
I mean, they don't live with them, so if the teacher hears things from the child and then they just say, okay, the student lives with the parents. The student can tell the parents any damn time they damn well feel like. I mean, it's not like, hey, have you talked to your parents about it? Hey, keep the secret from your parents. There's a separation between the parents and the teachers that
Well,
I think
again,
is
in
fine.
this case, in the scenario of at least this lawsuit, what they're alleging is
Right,
not that the girl came to the teachers to
right.
express or to confide in them about a gender identity. The teachers specifically, uh, I guess, maybe identified something about her
Hmm.
that was gender atypical,
Hmm.
and then they told her that she was bisexual, and they told her that she was transgender.
Hmm.
That ain't right.
I agree.
If they
If
identified a
that's the
gender
case.
atypical behavior
Hmm.
that might indicate that this person might be transgender, for example,
Hmm.
then the next step should be to tell the parents, hey, we identified this behavior. You might want to talk to your child about it and
Mm,
maybe pursue some kind
mm,
of
kind of
evaluation.
no,
If that's the concern,
no.
it
If
is. I mean,
well,
that is what should be done. Yes.
no. The children can choose to keep social things from their parents. They're people. They have rights. I mean,
No,
if no, they don't
parents
have
have
rights.
rights.
No.
Nope,
Okay.
children don't have rights. Parents have
Okay.
rights.
Great. I get to slap my kid around right here on stream, and it's fine. Well, I got the rights. No, children have rights. If if I murder a few, I get in trouble. You know. But they were mine, Your Honor. Those are my children, and I'm allowed to kill them.
You know what I meant.
I know, but I know I'm going to the extreme, but they are people. They have social
I
security
get it.
numbers. They have names.
They're also heavily influenceable people.
Right, and that's why I'm okay with this lawsuit going forward. I'm okay with this lawsuit finding out whether or not those teachers are forcing things on them. I would hate for that to happen. I would hate for that teacher to say, "Oh, I saw you wore a hoodie on Tuesday and Wednesday. You're clearly a trans man. Let's force you to go to this lunch meeting, and you're not allowed to tell your parents about it." That's all. That's a crime, in my opinion. That is a bad
Not
thing.
okay, yeah. So it should be a crime for
Great
them to do that.
for them
Good.
to do that.
And
If
and
right,
even if they didn't say you're not allowed to tell your parents, what if they just said probably shouldn't tell your parents?
if the
And this is a
you
person in a
because
position of power
now
above
we've
them.
gone from very obviously bad to slightly. Now we're in the gray area. Um, are you forcing this stuff on them? How much force? Ask the child. Are they forcing this on you?
Well, the
Why did
lawsuit
you not want
alleges
to tell them?
that the child was
Right.
asked.
And right. And the defense is going to say the child came to us. The child asked us not to tell her parents. The child was terrified of her parents finding out. The child was uh, not willing to tell their parents. The child did not want to tell their parents. The child showed up to these meetings on their own and asked questions and told us this is what they wanted. That's the the conflict that's going to happen in court, and we can find out what's going to happen. But the policy, as it was written, is fine with me.
Yeah, the policy is not okay with me because it's an
Okay.
opt out. It's an opt
Okay.
out policy rather than opt in.
Okay. And that's fine. Um,
Or you know what I mean.
yeah. Yeah.
It's the student. It's not that the student isn't expressing the desire to not tell the parents. It's that the student is not expressing the desire to tell the parents is the difference. And also in the same lawsuit, they do have a presentation from the teachers involved at the California Teachers Association conference,
Hmm.
where in the conference they said that they intentionally kept no club rosters.
That makes
They
sense. That's a good call.
they used their observations of kids in the classroom to determine which students to invite to the equality club,
Hmm.
and then admitted that students often don't want to attend on their own and need a bit of an invitation.
Hmm. Also fine.
Okay, those observations of kids in the classroom are what should have been brought to the parents in the first place. That's what I'm saying.
Mm, nah.
Yes.
I observed your
Have,
child doing a thing. No, don't care. I
um,
observed them
um,
committing a crime.
what
Yeah, let's talk to the thing. I
what
observed a
observations
nosebleed.
of
Let's talk
kids
to
in
the
the
parents about that.
classroom? Hold on a second.
Yeah.
No, if it was enough to observe the kid in the classroom and determine that they should receive an invite to the lunch club,
Hmm.
then
You invite them to the lunch club.
it probably would have been enough to tell the parent, "Hey, I observed these things. Uh, I think that they could be. I mean, if it's an indicator of a particular
Hmm.
orientation or something, then maybe bring it up to the parents."
No,
And
you invite
again,
them to the club and then you
but
find out about the parents. How do you? Okay, great.
but also don't
Hey,
forget
I
that a
saw
lot of
your.
these students are in middle school. They're 11 years old.
Yeah. Okay, great. I immediately call the parents and be like, "Hey, I observed a thing. Your daughter's wearing a hoodie, uh, and they either don't know what the fuck you're talking about, or worst case, well, my boy ain't no queer, and they start hitting them, or they take them out of this is how the abuse happens, is when you tell them this is the thing that's happening. No, you invite them to the lunch club, and you find out. If they say, hey, I would love to transition, but my parents are nightmares and they won't allow it, then you keep that to yourself. You don't tell everybody. You don't go reporting it to the school. This, not all children in this area have a safe space at home. They're trying to avoid abuse. You don't avoid abuse by telling the parents, hey, here's everything, giving them a full report. Because that report is what they're going to use as a reason for the abuse. If if
I
the
think that if a
teacher of
child is going to, children will display signs of abuse in the first place.
right, and if that great, I've observed. I'm a
You
teacher
know, if
now,
you
and
see,
I've
if you
observed
observe,
these
a parent is not
actions
going to become
and the
abusive over
abuse.
this kind of thing only. If a parent is abusive, to where telling them that their child had a certain behavior, they were already abusive. You're going to see things. You're going to have signs. You're going to have the child's behavior is going to be different. You might see bruises on the child that might need to be reported.
Is gay
Those, I mean,
conversion therapy abuse?
what?
Is gay conversion therapy abuse?
That's
It's follow me here. I promise it'll make sense. Is sending a 15-year-old to a Christian camp for gay conversion therapy abusive?
Are we talking like the shock therapy?
No, no, no. I'm just even if that's not physical. Hey, my 15-year-old son seems gay to me as a parent. I'm sending him to this camp where he prays and they teach him not to be gay. Is that abusive?
Um,
Because well, I'm starting at the end here. I'm at the end, and I'm going to walk it backwards here in just a minute, and you're going to see my point.
tell the
Is
parents that the kid's gay, and the
right.
parents send them to
You noticed it. You've seen where I'm leading you.
and the parents send them to a gay camp
Right. They
or
wouldn't have done that.
A Christian camp they
They
otherwise wouldn't have.
right.
Is that abusive? Um, I'd say it's misguided on the
Uh,
part of the parents, but
okay.
I don't think it's abusive. I think
I'm going to
abuse
suggest
requires a certain amount of intent.
mental abuse. Kyle mentions that you can't always see mental abuse. I agree. I'm saying sending them to that camp is abusive. They sent them to that camp because they found out the child sexuality. They found out the sexuality because the teacher reported it to the parents. The teacher notices something, reports it to the parents. The parents take an action which is harmful. This starts with that report that you just mentioned, telling the parents. If you don't tell the parents, then the parents didn't know, and they don't do that harmful thing, which is gay conversion therapy. They weren't abusive before that. They weren't hitting him. They weren't. They thought they had a normal child, but then when they got this new information of, hey, your child might be gay, they then don't like that. Send him to a camp, and he's mentally abused. I'm telling you that the catalyst for the abuse could be that report from the teacher.
I will again say that this is probably way less common than uh, you're making it out to be. And I think that most parents would probably lean more towards just accepting their kid as they are.
Then why don't the children want to tell them?
They don't even know it themselves.
Great, which means they need to be making the decisions.
Well, the teachers are the ones that are going to the kids and telling them what they are,
If they're
and
doing
then
that,
not
they're
telling the
wrong.
parents.
If they're doing that, they're wrong. If
Well,
it's
that's what a lot of these lawsuits are alleging.
That's what the lawsuits are alleging. And if it comes out that this lawsuit is incorrect and that the child came to this teacher and the teacher didn't tell the parents, are you still on board? Is it all right? You're going to say no because you want the teacher to report to the parents.
It comes down to why the child came to the teacher and not the parents.
Right, which is what they'll figure out in courts. Why did the child not want the parents to know? If it's because the love, I am going to suggest again that nobody's ever hidden things from their parents because they're going to be too supportive and love them too much. It's nonsense. There's no way in that hell that happens. They don't want their parents to know either because of they're embarrassed or they're social or they're worried that there will be some sort of backlash, maybe physical, maybe mental, maybe just
I
not
mean, do
liking
you
them
think that
anymore.
their embarrassment is less of a factor than the potential for abuse in what is otherwise a normal household?
I've been embarrassed
I
hundreds of
mean,
times, but abused never. So
yeah. So,
entirely
have you ever
possible.
been when you were a child? Were you ever not wanting to tell your parents something as a result of embarrassment over it,
Yes.
as opposed? Well,
Yes.
exactly then. So yes, there you go.
Great. We all
Maybe
agree
they are
then.
embarrassed, but the parents should still be told.
No, it's a
Like,
child's choice.
this is something where this is a very serious issue. Like, it
I
should
don't think it
be that the
is.
parent it is. The parents should be told so that they can follow the correct procedures, so that they can hire a psychiatrist, have the child go speak with them and figure out if they are having a gender identity issue
Mm-hmm.
and maybe if there is an underlying cause for it,
Mm-hmm.
or if there really is something there that could result in them needing to transition.
I agree that's the best case scenario.
That is probably what most parents will do,
I would hope so.
especially if the school has policies in place to perhaps recommend these steps.
If the child says to the teacher, "Hey, I want this, but don't tell my parents," I think that you're done. That's it. You do that and you don't tell the parents.
That is an opt-in thing, though, and
Right.
I agree with that. If the child says, "Don't tell my parents," fine.
Okay.
Expressly says, "Don't tell my parents."
Okay.
However, the policy that you highlighted earlier in the
Mm-hmm.
lawsuit is the exact opposite. The
No, it's
child
not.
has to expressly give permission to tell the parents.
Right.
That's
Which is what we
completely
just
different.
said. We just
No, no,
discussed.
no.
I said, "Don't tell my
Expressly
parents."
expressly saying "Don't tell my parents" is completely different from not saying "Tell my parents."
What?
I'll say it again. Expressly saying "Don't tell my parents" is completely different from just not saying "Tell my parents." So if you don't say "Tell my parents" under this policy, the school won't. What I'm saying is it should be different. It should be the student has to say, "Don't tell my parents."
This is a consent issue. Don't do anything you don't have consent to do. Teachers won't do anything they don't have consent to do. That's how consent works. It's great. It's fantastic. Uh, don't tell my parents means you don't have consent. Silence means you don't have consent. You can ask, "Hey, do you want me to discuss this with your parents?" It's probably a smart thing to do. Or explaining to them that what happens in this lunch meeting does not have to be explained to your parents unless you want it to be. In which case, you're covering all your bases and you're making sure that they comprehend the consent and everybody is happy.
See, this is where we don't agree. I mean, I think the parents have the right
Hmm.
to direct the development of their child.
They have input, but that child is a person. And as soon as they get the cognitive ability to keep things from their parents, they're allowed to.
Say that again?
Uh, uh, the children are people, And once they have the cognitive ability to keep things secret from their parents, they're allowed to. Um, really young children can't actually keep secrets. They don't comprehend the idea that they know a thing that their parents don't know. It's a thing that happens early development, 2 or 3. Um, it happens with toddlers. They can't comprehend that they know a thing that their parents don't know. It happens. It's a childhood development thing. It's actually one of the stages of development. It's a fairly small one that nobody even pays attention to. But once they become capable, and once they become cognitive and intelligent enough to recognize that I know something in my brain that my parents don't know, they're allowed to do that. It's fine.
Okay.
That is a human trait that will always exist. And it's not something that I would want a school teacher to violate. Which is why you just get consent. It's very easy. Hey, I saw you have these tendencies. Would you like to come to the Equality Club? Just invite them. And if they say, no, not for me, thanks, then leave it at that. If these teachers are
An
harming the
11-year-old
children,
does not have the wherewithal to know whether that's for them or not.
you said she stopped going.
She did, and then the teacher coerced her to come back.
According to this thing, which I am saying is probably horseshit. I do not believe them. But it will show up in court. If the teacher forced her to come back, then the teacher has harmed this child. If the teacher
It's not
if
even forced. It's influenced her.
if the teacher influenced her to come back, then she's harmed this child. A little bit. I mean, we're on terms of harm here. Murder's on one side, and then coercing them is bad, but making a strong suggestion. Hey, you should probably come to this meeting. I think you'll get a lot out of it. It's not that harmful. If they have a history and you can prove in court that these teachers are forcing this on these children or strongly coercing them. I'll even take out the word force. If the teachers here are strongly coercing these kids and the kids are pushing against it and don't want it, and they've been told don't tell your parents, then these teachers are harming these children. But
Okay.
I doubt that's what's happening. I personally doubt that's what's going on. I suspect that this student does not have a safe space at home and is worried that their parents will find out.
All
So
right.
they are keeping it from their parents. And I think they're
So,
allowed to do that.
so if this uh, complaint
Hmm.
is accurate,
Hmm.
under what law do they currently have the grounds to sue the school?
Isn't that
Because right now, the only one they're suing on, the only grounds they're suing on right now is the due process law under the 14th Amendment.
right? You mentioned the 14th Amendment. Okay.
That's what they're suing under, the fucking 14th Amendment. Do you think that maybe there should be an actual law that says that people aren't allowed to do this fucking shit?
No,
Because I do.
because this will, if the things they are accusing them of doing are true, then they will win this case. The court will see the
Maybe,
strong.
maybe the court will. You agree that if the things that are being accused
Hmm.
are happening,
Hmm.
then it is wrong that is happening, right?
Right, and and
Okay.
we can point to the
Now,
14th Amendment, say that it was wrong, and then you win your
okay, hold
case,
on.
and then you win your
Except that
case.
if the court's interpretation of the 14th Amendment is different from the people filing the suit, they will lose the suit. But you know that it's wrong that this is happening.
If this is true, it's bad, but it's not.
Okay.
It's not
So
a
if the court's
genocide of a
interpretation,
million people.
I
We gotta
understand.
comprehend where it's at.
I
It's
understand
bad,
that there should be a law, at least, to make it so the bad things don't happen, right?
and it exists under the 14th Amendment, apparently.
According to, if you're going to the Constitution as your grounds for this suit, I mean, I'd say the don't say gay law might be a necessity.
And forcing children to go to these things and pushing this on them uh, is bad and should be dealt with in court. And you can have a specific law that about that, but it will be abused by Meatball Ron DeSantis. It will be abused by him, and it will be pushed by who's that hateful guy we watched last week? Michael Knowles. Michael Knowles will push it as a nightmare scenario where parents' rights are being trampled on and these kids are being forced to be women. They will use it to harm people. They will use it to harm the minorities. That's what they'll do. That is what Michael
Well,
Knowles does
actually,
on a regular
you've got it a
basis.
little
He
backwards.
harms
Actually,
people.
most of the transgender people lately are female to male. But
Okay, regardless. Well, he doesn't complain about that, honestly. Um, very few people talk about the FTM, female to male, because we're
I think
not
it's because the
super
male to
worried about
female
it. Male to
is more
female
obvious.
is
Uh, you get
the
more
thing that they
instances of
want to be against. I mean, that's the drag shows that everybody's throwing a fit about. Men wearing dresses and wigs that they're upset
it's
about.
just because it's more out there.
Right.
But
So,
most of the lawsuits that are linked in the article and whatnot, and most of the complaining parents are female to male transitioners.
okay. So if the Say Gay bill was doing just making it illegal to force things on children, I'd be okay with it. But it's doing 1,000 things, and this is one thing. This is what usually happens when you and I talk about these things, is that you point to something good in the bill, and maybe it's good, but then there's 12 bad things in there too. And I'm like, why do we need to pass a giant bill with 17 things? One or two are good, and then the other 15 are nightmares.
Um, Honestly, I don't think there's a whole lot in this that's a nightmare.
It's
It requires teachers to tell students, and then your big problem is that trans teachers don't get to tell students that
right,
they're trans, basically.
right. They can't talk
Um,
about it. The gay teachers can't have a photo on their desk of their same-sex partner, or else that would be grooming. They can't discuss their family life. Uh, one of the
I get it,
earliest,
and that sucks.
assignments that you give children is draw your family. And
I get it.
if Billy draws two daddies, is he grooming all the other students? What does the teacher do about it? What if Billy says, "Hey, I have two daddies. Why do I not have two daddies?" What if he asks the parents? What if he asks the teacher? The teacher's like, "Herm, can't hear you. We're going to talk about something else now."
I mean, I look again. I get it. If unfortunately, it does raise questions in a child's mind that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So
Hmm.
I think it might be distasteful. Certain parts of this, like I don't necessarily think that uh, a transgender uh, woman
Hmm.
should be allowed or should be prohibited from introducing herself as Mrs. Smith,
Hmm.
for example.
Hmm.
Um, but in terms of if a child asks a question like, "Why are you Mrs. Smith but you have stubble or something?"
Hmm.
then maybe the right answer in all cases is I think that's a conversation to have with your parents.
And that's a reason that the Don't Say Gay bill is built this way. It's built in a way that parents are going to sue the school. Billy's going to say, "Hey, are you a boy or a girl?" to the teacher. The teacher's going to say, "You need to discuss that with your parents." He's going to go to his parents and be like, "Hey, I don't know if my second grade teacher's a boy or a girl." The parents are going to sue the school. The school will have to then hire a lawyer and defend themselves and spend money. They will have less money for teaching children. And that situation, seeing that situation happen next year, means the school won't hire the trans teacher. The school won't hire the gay teachers. And that is the point. That is the purpose of Ron DeSantis pushing these laws, is so that these people that he doesn't like will not be in public. I'm accusing him of that. You don't have to follow me there, but that's exactly what I'm accusing him of. He doesn't
No, I
want
mean,
these
I think
people
there's
to
plenty of
be
ways
in
around it.
public.
That I think that there are plenty of ways around it. There, any number of different ways to navigate those kind of questions from children without expressly bringing up subjects about gender identity and orientation and whatnot before they're ready for it. I mean, we're talking about young children here. You know,
Right.
people that are 7, 10 years old, 11 years old in the in a lot of these complaints that are being filed.
Hmm.
They're just, I don't think that they're prepared to have these discussions. They're not mentally capable yet, and there are ways. It does make it so that there's a delicate situation. It is distasteful that uh, they would be that a transgender teacher would not be allowed to uh, call themselves by their preferred pronoun and whatnot.
Hmm.
Uh,
And wouldn't that lead the school to be less likely to hire them? If the school thought, if you're in the reddest part of Florida and you have a male teacher who's married to another man, would you be less likely to hire him because he might accidentally say at some point, "Oh yeah, my husband," or if the because little Billy is going to go to his parents and be like, "Hey, my science teacher said he has a husband. What's that about?" And then the parents are going to sue the school, and the school's going to lose money, so they're not going to hire these people.
I
It
don't think it would play out like
creates.
that at
I
all.
think that's exactly how it's going to play out. That's exactly how it
No,
is going to play out. Yes, that you're seeing it right now. That's what this is. This is a parent suing the
no,
school for what
because
they've done.
it'll be the kid will say you have a husband and he'll say yeah, and he'll say wait aren't you a boy, and the teacher will say well that's a subject you should talk about with your parents,
And then he
and then
does.
they go talk about it with their parents, and then
And
the
their
teacher
parents
says this is
say
the
that they're
conversation that
groomers.
happened, and then
They're
the teacher's fine.
no, the parents have said, "Oh, he's been groomed. Now you groomed my child, and I'm suing the school." There are delicate discussions that need to happen between parents, children, and teachers. But that shouldn't include lawsuits unless there's some sort of uh, substantial harm.
Do you think that
This
the
lawsuit
first
might
response
have substantial
of a
harm.
do you think that the first response of a parent is to file a lawsuit?
If they're told by Fox News that their children are being fucking groomed by teachers, yes. They're going to
Well,
flip
I
out.
think that most parents' first response is going to be to call the school, to try to talk with the principal, talk with the teacher, and then once things are all worked out, if they find that something absolutely wrong has happened, then they'll
Hmm.
file a lawsuit. But lawsuits are fucking expensive,
That sounds
first of all.
reasonable. That sounds reasonable. But if you could
That's what
reason
the
that you could,
vast majority of people will do that.
if you could reason with Florida Republicans, there wouldn't be any Florida Republicans. Uh,
Oh, get out of here.
they're, they're unreasonable people. Florida
They are
Republicans are
absolutely
unreasonable
not.
people. Yes,
Hey, I lived among those people
I know, and they're
for years and
unreasonable.
years, and they're perfectly
So have
reasonable.
I,
Okay.
and they're not reasonable. Uh, I think that the not you're right. Not every single student is going to have their parents sue because of that. But the Don't Say Gay law makes it possible to do so. This Don't Say Gay law will cause a severe increase in student parents suing schools. And those schools are either going to lose money or they're going to stop hiring gay and trans people. Those are your options. Because what is the school to do? The schools are now seeing all of these upcoming lawsuits and for saying simple words. What do? They avoid it. School budgets are already damned complicated, and you do not want a surprise $100,000 going to a lawyer in the middle of the year. That's going to wreck your entire budget. So,
Okay.
what do you
But the
do?
parents also have to spend that money to do that.
No, because in the
You,
Don't Say Gay law, they get recompensed. If you are a trailer house dwelling Florida student or Florida person, and you sue that school for something that for having a gay teacher or something along those lines, and you win, the school then pays your lawyer bills. I know it might cost some money upfront, but you start a Kickstarter, you go on Fox News, you get your support, you do it anyway, and you get repaid.
The Don't Say Gay bill doesn't uh, provide for any sort of compensation in terms of legal
I
expenses
thought it
for a
did, but
lawsuit.
maybe
It
I
does
okay.
not.
I'm not hard on that thing, but I thought it did. I read somewhere that it did, but if it doesn't, it doesn't.
No, it literally isn't even in the. There's nothing. I'm CTRLFing it right now. There's nothing that says expenses. There's nothing that says legal. There's nothing that says. I just forgot what other thing I typed in. I typed in three search terms that would have been result in accordance with that, like legal expenses. Let's see, fees.
Maybe it's the anti-woke law that did it to stop woke law. I don't remember. Where I'm okay. I will research that, and I will stop suggesting that it will pay for those things. But
Oh, hold on a second. I found it. I
mhm.
found what you're talking about, except that it's been struck from the bill.
Okay, well that's new then. Okay, great.
So it's lined out. So you don't get attorney's fees and court costs to the parent if you get injunctive relief. So
Okay, okay. So it was a thing.
it
I'm
was
I'm
at some
behind.
point, but it's been stricken from the bill.
Okay, because if that were still in there, are you still on board with this?
If it were still in there,
Can you see
probably
my
not.
complaint? Can you see my complaint about this?
I get
That
it. I think that this is a necessary bill. I think that your scenario where this fills the courts with lawsuits over a gay teacher having a husband and mentioning it uh, could have ended up being an issue with the fees thing. But
hmm
like I've been saying, suing people is fucking expensive.
hmm
Um, if you're gonna do that, you have to know that you're going to win, basically,
hmm
um, which would require a pretty substantial, I think, argument. Most lawyers, I think, in that case, would laugh at you for coming into the door with that case, and they wouldn't agree to take it.
I mean, until this law gets passed, and they think that they'll get money, fame, and news time for it. I mean, lawyers work off of the press as well. Lawyers need to get their name out there, and big time lawyers have big time names, and they get to charge more because they're well known.
Well,
And
getting your
so,
name out there only works in your favor if you win,
if
because if you
if he
get known
thinks
as the
he's going to
lawyer that
win,
fucking
yeah,
loses, your career's over.
okay. And if he thinks he's going to win, they would take it, and that would harm the school
Again, you
for
have to have
nothing.
a substantial case to think you're going to win.
Yes, I agree. You have to have a substantial case. This bill makes it less substantial. It lowers that bar. This bill is lowering the bar for suing schools.
Well, it's establishing a bar because there wasn't one.
You could always sue a school. In fact, they're doing it right here. Is it? What is this in Florida?
No, that's in California.
Okay, great. So in California, you can sue schools. Great.
They're
You
suing
could always
a school
school.
under an obscure part of the 14th Amendment.
hmm
There
And if
there
you,
isn't a law that they're suing under. They're going all the way back to the U.S. Constitution in order to make this lawsuit.
okay,
Whereas
okay.
I think that we probably should have some hard and fast rules about this.
I don't mind having hard and fast rules, but I think that they will be used to hurt the minority. That is what hard and fast rules typically do. I mean, if only there were other situations where we could look at our country as a whole and suggest and find situations where rules are applied to minorities but not the majority. Happens a lot around here, and I'm always worried about it. It is a theme within the country is that we pass hard and fast laws that get uh, enforced on the minority but not the majority.
Laws should be enforced equally. I agree.
I agree, they should be. Yet, uh, history would suggest that they haven't been. And when they aren't, it's generally harming already uh, vulnerable people.
I think that that covers
Yeah, I think we're
a
good
little too
on
many,
this. Yeah, yeah.
um, a little too many topics to
Hmm.
adequately refute all at once. So
I know. I am being very
that is a
broad
very
and
broad
vague with that. It
statement
is a very broad statement. I
that
agree.
I'll let you have, and maybe we can talk about some specific issues in the future about that.
Oh, hi. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you liked what you saw, hit the like button, press the subscribe button. Uh, if you want to tell me how right I am, feel free to leave a comment. If you want to tell me how wrong I am, leave a comment too. That's good. Um, this is just kind of a hobby for me, so I appreciate you coming by, giving it a watch, and pressing the YouTube buttons. Thanks.